What's going on, guys? CryptoVatsik here with another technical analysis video for you. As always, nothing of what you're about to see is considered financial advice, as they are just my opinions. But if you do enjoy this content, I would really appreciate it if you smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. Today, I am going to be covering Kadena, and we are currently on the KDA USDT weekly chart. And things are finally starting to get really interesting here, on account that we are finally starting to show some strength and momentum, and we're doing it on very significant volume. You'll notice my lines of resistance from my previous video on KDA, and we've got our first high time frame line of resistance right here, which is now denoted in green because it looks like price is potentially flipping it, but at least we are trading within this zone again, rather than down here well below it. And then of course we've got our second line of resistance up here in red. So the initial objectives of flipping resistance really came from these prior highs that we had over here in 2023. Okay, these were those initial highs that we had broken with this major short squeeze. And I call this a short squeeze because it was lacking continuous momentum or continuation. But as we know, the market was not ready at that point, or at least the altcoin market was not ready to really take off into the bull run. So what did we do? We came all the way back down, as short squeezes typically do. And we not only tested these lows, but in fact, we made a true lower low, marking the bottom right here. So that's fine. But this short squeeze was really good to see. It clearly showed that there is demand on this asset. But like any other asset or altcoin would do on a short squeeze, is fall short afterwards because of all the sell pressure of trapped buyers. But we've had the bear market, we've had the short squeeze. Now is where it gets interesting. Now is where we start to see the result of accumulation. And KDA is, in my opinion, just coming out of our accumulation phase, on account that we've just pierced this first line of resistance. And all the while it's doing it on record-breaking volume, and this is on Binance. So that is exactly what you want to see. Okay, so we took out these prior highs, okay, these resistances. That was all of this chop within here, but now we've clearly, with confidence, broken and flipped those lines of resistance. So then we start to look at our green high time frame resistance here. Okay, this green zone, this is truly a baseline that KDA needs to flip, meaning I don't want to see this candle wick all the way down and then we're trading back down here again, because then I would just expect us to chop and consolidate above this prior highs resistance here. Or you could argue this range's high here of resistance flipped into the support and chop around there is what I would expect if we saw weaker price action. But I'm liking this wick. This pierce is pretty significant on this wick here, piercing above our green zone. So what I would like to see is, even if this candle closed out somewhere where it's at right now or within the green zone here for some lower time frame consolidation within this zone, I'd be happy to see that until the market's ready to push higher again. And a clear flip of this zone would be a candle close above it. So you don't necessarily want to see just the wick. You want to see that close with confidence above it, and then it can continue to consolidate and chop around until we are ready to go higher. So at this stage, I've flipped it as green because I do think it's in the process of being flipped, and I've already got my eyes on our second line of resistance. This is quite high time frame, and it's really just denoted from these highs here as well as these highs, and then from this, basically this baseline that KDA found back here in June 2022 and tried to hold it as support for multiple months. That is essentially the next area that I would expect KDA to at least find its next consolidation area. And to be quite frank with you, there's not a lot of significant price action within this void here. You know, nothing obvious other than these wicks that tells me there's a clear line of resistance between our green zone and red zone. So it could mean once green is truly flipped, this zone might fly very quickly up to red. Basically what I mean by that is all of this zone in here is kind of like an empty void, because all we have is the price action to the left. The historic price action is what we can work with. And once you start going too far back in time, you start getting to price levels that are potentially less significant, less relevant, unless it's something like an all-time high. But in here, we basically just got SR levels being flipped in this bear market. We had that short squeeze, and now we look and there's really not much to work with in here. And the other thing is that I'll add is that we do have a diagonal here, which is a downward sloping diagonal that initiated way back here from the bear market beginning almost. Okay, at this point, we're still working with this downward sloping diagonal. And you can just see the gap between current price action and that diagonal is still pretty significant, right? This is still a large gap in yellow here between price and the trend line. So it kind of lines up really nicely. I wouldn't be surprised, as I say, if yellow doesn't take much managed to slice through until finally finding a form of resistance around our second line of resistance here in red. And keeping in mind, these could have some significant wicks to the upside. Okay, we could have something that looks like this, much like we had over here and down here. These are massive wicks, so always try to stick to the high time frame, especially if you're looking longer term. But I like to see the fact that we have, with confidence, broken out of this range down here that we had. Okay, this is a consolidative pattern or an accumulative pattern, which subsequently marked our bottom after this low here, which definitely looked like a bottom. So that's kind of stage one. Flip these minor resistances, so we look to the high time frame, major resistance in green as the next objective, and further up, and so on and so on. Now let's just drop down to the 12-hour to zoom in on what current price action is looking like and just drill into what we're seeing here. Okay, so on the 12-hour, we are seeing some pretty nasty wicks here. Okay, KDA likes to see these wicks, at least on Binance, but already seems to be quickly being bought up. So that's fine. I mean, I think that we're not necessarily out of the woods yet, but like I said, if we see that consolidation anywhere within this zone of green here, I'm happy with. Consolidation in there on a high time frame, 12-hour or daily, I am completely happy with. That's fine with me. I think it's expected that we come down, take out some of this inefficient balance on this move up. You know, maybe we come back down, test this area of consolidation here, you know, put in a lower high, so to speak, and then ultimately break out of that trend upwards. Something like that would make sense to me. But like I said, if we are due for a deeper retrace and KDA falls short and starts trading below our green zone, then I think we're looking at this flip resistance here, and we're looking at all of this chop down here as our next area of support, which is possible. I think if that happened, it would be a pretty quick tap, and then we'd be really putting green to the test again. So, you know, something like that is possible as well. I'm leaning towards the former, especially when we start looking at this volume. There's buyers, there's serious buyers coming into play here. Let's look at the 4-hour. Okay, so on the 4-hour here, we've got a pretty decent consolidation pattern here. To be honest with you, I mean, this is like a steady climb up here, okay? This isn't like in just a few candles like this, where it's straight up and price just wants to come back down again. This is more of a steady grind to the upside with a clear low here, you know, a clear ascending trend there that's been broken now, and ultimately retesting it here. So we've put in a fresh high here, and you know what looks to be a pretty classic consolidation pattern to me, which could take some more time to play out. You know, we could put in a lower low still, come back down and really test these highs until, like I said, the market's really ready to push again. So now is the time to be careful, especially if you're trading on some of the lower time frames. I would say the 4-hour and to the 2-hour, you know, this is where you could get trapped. This is where you get stopped out. This is where you want to use a little bit more precision in your trading, and you want to kind of start to look at the candle closes. You know, what are the closes doing versus these deviations outside of trends with these massive wicks? But I mean, ultimately, high time frame, keeping in mind that we are in the bull market now, so these consolidation patterns are to be expected off of fresh highs. So you can start marking out, you know, prior highs, prior ranges, and those equilibriums as potential targets to the downside on the lower time frames, and then remembering on the high time frames those key areas of support and resistance, ultimately trading within our green zone here, which is looks to be, to me, flipping it into support now until we get a pretty swift reversal and then enter our yellow void here, if you remember, then heading up to our second line of resistance in red. So something like this really would make sense to me, especially with the strength in the market right now, the volume we're seeing, the steady grind up that we've pushed in here too, and just the fact we're in a bull market and Bitcoin's making all-time highs. So that liquidity will flow into altcoins, as we know. Every cycle we see it from Bitcoin into the altcoin market, and KDA is now poised for a really decent push, in my opinion. So just remember to stick to precision on that low time frame. If you're looking longer term, you know, look for those high time frame dips to get involved for that longer term period or longer term outlook, and you know, stick to those key high time frame levels. You know, even if you are trading in the lower time frame, you want to be marking out those high time frame levels as a reference, as a target. I think altcoins will surprise us again, as they always do, and trade safely, guys. Use stop losses and have fun this bull market. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Let me know what you think in the comments, specifically about KDA. If you like it, if you don't like it, whatever, I want to hear from you, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.